They say every lie starts small. Mine began with a doctor's envelope, a half-empty bottle of wine, and a memory I refuse to let die. My name is Clara Whitmore, 36, marketing strategist, mother of a 1-year-old girl, and the woman who ruined her own marriage with a single choice. The day it all fell apart was supposed to be a celebration. Our daughter Lily's first birthday. The backyard was filled with balloons, folding chairs, family, and the kind of laughter that hides exhaustion. My husband Ethan was everywhere at once, grilling burgers, refilling drinks, making sure everyone was happy. He's that kind of man. Dependable, decent, predictable in a way that feels safe until you realize you've mistaken comfort for connection. Ethan was everything a husband should be, but I was never really there. Every time I looked at Lily, I saw someone else. Someone who shouldn't exist anymore. Daniel Ross. My first husband. My first love. The man who died on a rainy night 3 years before Lily was born. He was reckless, wild, the kind of man who made you feel like gravity bent around him. We'd been trying to start a family before his accident. I thought losing him had broken me beyond repair. Then came Ethan. Sweet, steady, patient Ethan. He didn't try to replace Daniel. He just waited until I stopped crying long enough to notice him. We got married a year later. I told myself it was love. Maybe it was, in its quiet, manageable way. But when Ethan suggested starting a family, something in me snapped. Because I knew what I wanted, and it wasn't his child. At least not entirely. When fertility treatments failed, Ethan blamed himself. I didn't. Because I remembered something no one else knew, that Daniel's genetic samples were still stored at the old clinic from when we tried IVF years ago. The thought came in whispers first, then louder every day. You could have a piece of him again. I convinced myself it was grief, not deceit. I told the clinic we were using a previous donor. Technically true, just not Ethan's donor. When I found out I was pregnant, I cried for an hour, not from joy, but guilt. Ethan thought it was happiness, and I let him believe that. For a while life worked. We were normal. Lily was born, and Ethan loved her so purely it hurt to watch. Sometimes I'd wake up in the night and see him standing over her crib, humming. And every time, I'd see Daniel's eyes staring back from our daughter's face. Guilt and grief have a funny way of twisting together until you can't tell one from the other. By the time Lily turned 1, I'd convinced myself the secret could stay buried forever. I almost believed it, until Kelly showed up. Kelly Moore, my oldest friend, the one person who knew the whole truth. She'd held my hand at Daniel's funeral, and she was the only person I'd told about the clinic. She promised to keep it quiet. But Kelly never could resist a little chaos, especially after a few glasses of Chardonnay. The party was almost over when I heard her voice from the kitchen. So, when are you going to tell Ethan the truth about Lily? I froze behind the doorway, heart hammering. Why would I? I laughed, too loudly, too nervously. He's a good dad. Nobody needs to know she's really Daniel's baby. It felt like dropping a match in a room soaked with gasoline. Because Ethan was standing right behind me. The look on his face, God, I'll never forget it. Like he'd been erased in front of his own eyes. He didn't scream, didn't even speak. Just turned, walked to our bedroom, and packed a single duffel bag. Before he left, he took Lily's stuffed rabbit and her birth certificate. I found the certificate later that night, my husband's name crossed out in thick black ink. Since I'm just the co-parent, the note read, you won't need my signature anymore. He left the house. Left me. Left us. I tried calling. Dozens of times. He didn't answer. Then I texted. Pleaded. Ethan, please. I made a mistake. Don't do this. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a mistake. It was theft. I had stolen his fatherhood. When I finally fell asleep that night, it was with the sound of Lily's breathing beside me and the echo of my own heart breaking in my chest. The next morning, Ethan was gone not just from our home, but from my life. His number disconnected, his office saying he'd taken personal leave. Then came the lawyers. Kelly told me over brunch, because of course she'd already heard it through someone. He's filing for paternity fraud, Clara. That's serious. You could lose everything. She laughed when she said it, like it wasn't my entire life on the line. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. I hated myself more. The whispers started soon after. At the grocery store. At daycare. The other moms stopped meeting my eyes. Even my mother-in-law, Margaret Whitmore, called me heartless before hanging up. Everyone painted Ethan as the victim, and he was. But nobody saw what it did to me. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was trying to keep a part of someone I'd already lost. It doesn't matter, though. Intent doesn't change betrayal. When you lie about something as sacred as a child, you don't just destroy your marriage, you destroy the meaning of trust itself. That's when Brandon Pierce entered the picture. Brandon was a client. Charming, confident, and dangerously persuasive. He'd been flirting with me for months, always hinting that he understood how lonely marriages can get. I ignored it at first, until the night he texted. You can't let him control the story. Make him look unstable before he makes you look evil. That message changed everything. Brandon was in public relations too, and he offered to help manage the narrative. I told myself it was just strategy, not manipulation. But it wasn't about work. It was about control. About saving face. He taught me how to turn sympathy into a weapon. If he paints you as a liar, you paint him as a monster. Say you were scared. That he's erratic. People believe mothers, especially the ones who look like victims. It was cruel. But cruelty and survival often look alike. So I did it. I went to the police. Filed a report saying Ethan had emotional outbursts, that I was afraid for my safety. It wasn't true, but it kept me from losing Lily immediately. At least, that's what I told myself. When Detective Monroe came to ask questions, I felt my stomach twist. I'd rehearsed the lines, but I couldn't meet his eyes. He didn't believe me. I could tell. Still, the system moved slow. I thought I had time to fix things, maybe even make Ethan see reason. Then one afternoon, I saw him across town, outside a coffee shop. I panicked. My hands shook on the wheel. He looked thinner, angrier. I rolled down my window to call out, but he didn't see me. And before I knew it, my foot pressed too hard on the gas. There was a thud, a scream, and the world spun sideways. The next thing I remember was sirens, people shouting, someone yelling, she tried to hit him. They said it was attempted vehicular assault. But I swear on everything, I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was trying to stop. The detective didn't believe me this time either. I spent that night in a holding cell, staring at the concrete wall, wondering when exactly I became the villain in my own story. Because maybe I wasn't trying to destroy Ethan. Maybe I was just trying to erase the guilt that had already destroyed me. But it was too late. By morning, the world knew my name, and not for the reasons I'd ever wanted. The morning after my arrest, the air inside the police station smelled like burnt coffee and old regrets. I sat there, staring at my reflection in the interrogation room mirror, eyes red, hair tangled, mascara dried in streaks. I barely recognized myself. The woman who used to close six-figure PR deals now looked like a mugshot waiting to happen. When Detective Monroe finally walked in, he looked tired, not angry, not even disappointed. Just tired. You're lucky your husband didn't press for attempted homicide, he said, flipping through his file. But the footage looks bad, Mrs. Whitmore. It was an accident, I whispered. I swear to God, I didn't mean to. Intent's hard to prove when you accelerate toward someone at 40 miles an hour. He slid a pen across the table. You'll need a lawyer. That word, lawyer, hit me harder than the crash ever did. I didn't call some miracle attorney who happened to be ready like the stories online. Real life doesn't work that way. It took 3 days, 2 humiliating rejections, and 1 voicemail begging before I finally got an appointment with Harold Kavanaugh, a defense attorney who looked like he'd been practicing law since Lincoln was president. His office smelled of old books and disappointment. He didn't even look up when I entered. Clara Whitmore. Vehicular assault, pending paternity fraud claim, possible defamation. Quite the resume. I didn't mean to hit him, I said, voice shaking. Of course you didn't, he replied dryly, flipping a page. That's what they all say. He studied me for a moment like a doctor diagnosing a patient too late. You lied to your husband about your child's paternity. That's civil fraud, possibly criminal. You filed a false police report. That's perjury. And now you've been caught on camera hitting him with your car. He leaned back in his chair. Tell me, Mrs. Whitmore, are you trying to go to prison, or does it just happen naturally? I wanted to scream, cry, run, anything but sit there while this stranger dissected my sins. I was scared, I said. He was going to take Lily away. So, you thought hitting him with a car would improve your chances? Silence. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Look, I've seen worse. But if you want my advice, stop lying. To yourself, to the police, to the press. It's not about saving face anymore. It's about survival. I left his office numb, clutching a retainer agreement I couldn't afford. That night, I sat in my car outside my old house, Ethan's house now, watching the warm glow through the windows. Lily's shadow moved across the curtains, tiny and perfect. I hadn't seen her in a week. That's when Brandon called. You shouldn't be alone tonight, his voice purred through the speaker. You saw the news, I said flatly. Everyone saw the news. You're trending. I hated the way he said it, like fame and infamy were the same thing. Brandon, my life is falling apart. Then let's rebuild it. Together. He showed up at my apartment with takeout and a smile that belonged on magazine covers. For the first time in weeks, someone looked at me without judgment. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. He poured wine, asked about the crash, about Ethan, about how we could control the damage. Every question felt strategic, like he was taking notes in his head. But I was too tired to care. We can spin this, he said. You're the wronged wife. A grieving widow who made a mistake under pressure. People love a redemption arc. I lied about everything, Brandon. There's no redemption left. There's always redemption if the story's good enough. I should have thrown him out right then. But I didn't. Because he made me feel powerful again. Wanted. Not a monster, just a woman who'd made a bad choice and was smart enough to survive it. So when he kissed me, I didn't pull away. Maybe part of me needed to be wanted for something other than pity. 2 weeks later, I was sitting under bright studio lights, makeup thick enough to hide the exhaustion. Brandon had arranged it all, a local news interview, my chance to tell my side. The producer whispered countdown numbers. I could see my reflection in the teleprompter, soft, sympathetic, rehearsed. The interviewer smiled, too polished to be sincere. Clara, tell us what really happened that day. I'd practiced my lines all night. It was an accident. My husband was angry, unpredictable. I panicked. I only wanted to protect my daughter. I spoke with tears in my voice, like the perfect image of a frightened mother. The segment aired with the headline, Suburban Mom Speaks Out, Fear, Lies, and Survival. By morning, the donations poured in. Brandon set up a GoFundMe for my legal fees. Within 24 hours, it hit $10,000. For the first time since Ethan left, I felt like I was winning. But I didn't realize the game was already over. Because Ethan wasn't just sitting quietly, somewhere licking his wounds. He was building a case. 3 days later, Brandon burst into my apartment, phone in hand, pale as paper. You need to see this. He showed me a video already viral on social media, Ethan at my office, standing in the lobby, holding his phone, playing my recorded confession. My voice echoed through the speakers for the world to hear. He's a good dad. Nobody needs to know she's really Daniel's baby. The clip had millions of views. The caption read, Wife admits paternity fraud while claiming abuse. Who's the real victim? My hands shook as I scrolled through the comments. Lock her up. She tried to kill her husband. Sociopath pretending to be a mom. My employer suspended me by noon. The GoFundMe was frozen for fraud investigation. And by evening, Brandon's charm had turned into panic. He can't do this. He can't use that recording without consent. It's public now, Brandon. It's over. He paced like a caged animal. No, we're not done. I'll handle it. I always do. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. The way his phone pinged constantly, the coded texts, the folders labeled client statements that looked more like spreadsheets of money transfers. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Damage control," he said too quickly. But something was off. Later that night, curiosity won over fear. While he showered, I unlocked his laptop using the password I'd seen him type earlier. Phoenix 87. What I found made my blood run cold. Dozens of bank statements, fake invoices, offshore transfers. Money moving between my name, his company, and accounts I didn't recognize. Brandon wasn't saving me. He was using me, laundering his money through my PR firm's accounts. The same donations that came into my legal fund? He'd rerouted half of it into his own business. I snapped the laptop shut just as he came out of the bathroom. He smiled like nothing had happened. I smiled back, hiding the shaking in my hands. Because now I knew something he didn't. He was about to drag me down with him. 2 nights later, I called my lawyer again. "Mr. Kavanaugh," I said, "hypothetically, what happens if I have evidence of financial crimes, but I'm implicated too?" "Depends," he said dryly. "Are you asking for a friend or for yourself?" "For both." There was a long silence. "You're out of your depth, Mrs. Whitmore. Get me those documents before the FBI does." The next day, I made copies of everything and hid them under Lily's old baby clothes in my closet. That same evening, my phone buzzed, a restricted number. When I answered, it was Ethan. The first time I'd heard his voice in weeks. "You thought you could destroy me, Clara," he said calmly. "But you destroyed yourself." "Ethan, please. The truth always wins, even if it takes time." He hung up before I could respond. I stood there in the dark, shaking, staring at my reflection in the window, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. This wasn't about love anymore, or guilt, or even Lily. It was about war. And the man I'd once called my safe place was about to become the storm that ended me. It's strange how quickly everything that used to define you disappears. Your job, your name, your friends, gone in a single headline. After the video of my confession went viral, I thought I had already hit rock bottom. I was wrong. Rock bottom still had a basement. 3 weeks later, the door to my apartment exploded open at 7 in the morning. I thought it was Ethan, but it was worse. Federal agents, badges flashing, shouting my name. I didn't even have time to grab my phone before they cuffed me. They tore through everything, drawers, computers, even Lily's baby box. One agent, a woman with sharp eyes and zero sympathy, read the warrant aloud. Financial fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. I couldn't even speak. My tongue felt like sandpaper. All I could think was one name. Brandon. They found the folders I'd hidden, the printed bank statements. I told them I had no idea what any of it meant. They didn't believe me, of course. Why would they? The money trail was under my company's name. Every donation, every transaction. At the precinct, I asked for my lawyer. It took hours before Harold Kavanaugh finally arrived, wearing the same tired expression as always. "You weren't exaggerating," he said, flipping through the documents. "Your boyfriend's a thief, but you, Mrs. Whitmore, look like his partner." "I didn't know," I whispered. "He used my accounts." "Then you're either his victim or his accomplice. The FBI doesn't care which yet." He leaned closer. "They already have enough to indict Pierce. If you cooperate, they might offer leniency." The word hung in the air like a promise and a threat. Leniency. Not innocence. Just less punishment. I signed the statement. Gave them everything. Every text, every email, every password. Watching them haul Brandon out of his gym 2 days later should have felt like justice. But it didn't. It just felt empty. He glared at me while they pushed him into the car. "You think this saves you? You think Ethan's going to let you walk?" I didn't answer. Because deep down, I knew Ethan wasn't finished. The custody summons came next. Thick envelope. Legal seal. My name on the top. Ethan was petitioning for full custody of Lily. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Cold. No audience, just silence that hummed like static. Ethan sat across from me, clean-cut, collected, his lawyer beside him with a neat stack of papers. I wanted to tell him I was sorry. that I never meant for any of this to happen. But apologies sound meaningless when they come too late. The judge, an older woman with iron hair, reviewed the evidence without expression. She read the list of charges aloud: paternity fraud, false reporting, obstruction, embezzlement. It didn't sound like a life anymore. It sounded like a resume for ruin. When it was my turn to speak, I tried to find words that didn't sound like excuses. I know what I did was unforgivable, I said. But I love my daughter. Whatever else I've done, she's still my whole world. Ethan didn't look at me. His eyes stayed on Lily's photograph in his hands. The judge tapped her pen, sighed, and said the sentence that still echoes in my head. Mrs. Whitmore, love is not a defense. This court finds you unfit for primary custody. Mr. Whitmore will assume full guardianship. The gavel fell like a door slamming shut on my life. They let me see Lily one last time before transferring me to county. She didn't understand, of course. She just saw Mommy in a gray suit, smelling like fear. She reached out her little arms and said, "Come home." I wanted to lie again, to promise her I would. But lies are what brought us here. So I just kissed her forehead and said, "Be good for Daddy." I thought that would be the end of it. But prison teaches you that endings don't come neatly packaged. They bleed. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom again, this time as the defendant in a fraud case. Brandon pled guilty and tried to drag me down with him, but my cooperation earned me a deal: 5 years reduced to 3 with time served. When the sentence was read, I didn't cry. There's a point where tears don't mean anything. The news ran the story for one day: suburban mom involved in embezzlement scheme. By the next morning, I was just another forgotten headline. In prison, the days blur together. You stop counting them, because numbers start to feel like enemies. But nights are harder. Nights are when memories replay like broken film reels. Ethan's face when he heard the truth. Lily's laugh echoing from another room. Daniel's ghost, the one I built all this around, fading until I can't remember the sound of his voice. Sometimes I wonder if grief ever justifies what I did. Maybe I loved too much, or maybe I never knew what love was to begin with. Ethan visited once, 6 months before I was eligible for parole. He looked older, but calm. He sat across from me, hands folded, the way he used to when we first met. "I didn't come for closure," he said quietly. "I came because Lily deserves answers someday. I need to know what to tell her." I wanted to tell him everything. How Daniel's death broke something in me that he could never fix, how I convinced myself love could be borrowed through genetics, how every lie started as a way to keep one man alive by killing another. But the truth felt small now, meaningless under the weight of what it cost. "Tell her," I said finally, "that her mother made mistakes because she couldn't let go of the past. And that loving someone doesn't always mean you're good for them." He nodded once. There was no anger in his face anymore. Just distance. Before he left, he pulled out a photograph: Lily, smiling in a new backyard, sunlight in her hair. "She's doing well," he said. "She asks about you sometimes." "Does she hate me?" "She doesn't understand hate yet." He stood, hesitated, then added, "You were right about one thing. She's not mine by blood. But she's my daughter, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it." When he walked away, I realized that maybe that was the real punishment, knowing that the man I destroyed still became everything I pretended to be. Time moves strangely in confinement. By the time my release date came, the world outside had forgotten me. No job, no friends, no money, just a halfway house and a parole officer who didn't care about my tears. I sent one letter to Ethan after getting out. Not to ask for forgiveness, but to say thank you for raising her. I don't know if he read it. Sometimes, late at night, I still dream about that backyard birthday. Balloons, laughter, the smell of cake. In the dream, Ethan is smiling, Lily's running between us, and Daniel's name never existed. Then I wake up, and reality sits heavy again. People online used to call me a monster. Maybe they were right. But monsters aren't born. They're built out of choices we can't take back. I built mine out of grief, lies, and the desperate wish to feel whole again. And the cruelest part? I got exactly what I wanted. A child with Daniel's eyes. But when I see those eyes now, even in memory, they don't remind me of love. They remind me of the truth I tried to bury, that nothing built on deceit ever survives. If anyone reading this still believes that one lie can save them, take it from me. It won't. It only delays the collapse. Justice doesn't always come in courtrooms. Sometimes it comes when you're left alone with the silence of what you've done, and realize it's the only company you'll ever deserve.